Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to catch up with some of the updated reshuffle news and focus in on the evidence that Tories are very much gearing up for a May general election. Trust me. As well as how red wall Tories are losing their minds. But it's a problem entirely of their own making. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, in amongst the major names leaving, entering, or just sidestepping in cabinet, there's been a little flurry of junior ministerial resignations. Not sackings, although there has been quite a spicy sacking as well. But there's been several that they're not protest resignations. You know, they're just resignations. They've asked to step down. Ministers, including people like Jessie Norman, Nick Gibbs, who are considered competent, no axe to grind. They've asked Rishi Sunak if they can step down. He didn't necessarily want them to. They've said they want to spend more time in their constituencies, which means one of two things. First, that they are worried about their seats for the election, those who wish to contest those seats for the election, and they need to sacrifice ministerial duties to focus on local campaigning. Or second, which is basically the case here, because they're not going to be MPs after the election and want to get the gardening leave out the way. After stepping down as a minister, you are expected to wait for a certain period of time before you take on certain jobs, especially lobbying jobs. This is typically about 6 months, as it was, I think, for Sue Gray before she could join the Labour Party. So, junior ministers stepping down, with none of the factional infighting being the reason for it, is taken by many to be a move to get this period of time out of the way so that they can take up those jobs right after the election. And doing so now would, of course, suggest a May general election. So this little flurry of resignations is evidence, not proof, but it is evidence of a spring general election. And those of you who've listened to me on my other videos talking about general election timing will know that I've thought May 2024 is the most likely date for a very long time now. I've never been able to rule out the next autumn because, you know, you could imagine them getting themselves into a position where next spring looks terrible. Oh, let's see if something good happens over summer. But it would be a strategic mistake for the Tories. Autumn's going to be much worse. You know, talk of autumn, I thought, was just a way of trying to wrong foot Labour. Or maybe just giving themselves the option if something really terrible happens next spring. In terms of other fallouts from the reshuffle today, Theresa Coffey has left the government. She was in Downing Street for a very long time. I mean, hours. So it was quite clear there was some disagreement. You know, it wasn't a quick, oh, Theresa, I would like you to do this different job. All right, then. You know, it was, it eventually was announced that she was resigning. Now, my speculation would be that Sunak wanted to keep her in government, but in a different role. And that she wasn't happy about it because it would be a demotion. In the end, it looks like she's just decided to resign rather than be moved, especially, as I say, if it would be a demotion. Again, a good move by Sunak to remove her, if indeed that's what's happened. She was deeply unpopular, really, to DEFRA stakeholders like farmers, environmental campaigners. She really didn't get on well with them. She was a quite stunningly terrible Secretary of State, just as she was for the Department for Work and Pensions before her, in the Department for Health. Like, as long as she doesn't cause the leadership trouble from the backbenchers, this is no loss to Sunak's government. Her resignation letter gave no indication that she intends to take part in rebellions, so a welcome move all around. Barclay moved from health to DEFRA. When I saw that he'd gone from health, I actually was wondering at this point if Sunak is taking a punt at competence for a change. But not quite. It is still a bit of a rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I could be on board with the idea of a clear out of the useless and giving us just 6 months of a government that at least tries. It's a bit like the saying amongst Newcastle fans for so many years until recently. We don't demand a team that wins, we just want one that tries. You can imagine many moderate Conservatives identifying with that. Sunak had the chance, he's instead just tinkered. I will say, however, and I'll draw upon this in my third video today as well, he has at least removed culture warriors. So in terms of, he hasn't necessarily massively injected a load of competence into his government. He has at least removed culture wars. You know, behind the scenes, red wall MPs are agitating, removing Braverman, appointing Cameron. It's seen as a move to shore up support in the blue wall, but abandon the red wall. This is a reasonable way of looking at it, but red wall MPs only have themselves to blame. First of all, the red wall collapse was always going to be, by and large, a one-off as a result of the bizarre set of circumstances surrounding the 29 general election. It wasn't going to be repeated at the next election. Most of them should have realised it was a one-term gig, that they weren't going to hold on to their seats. Their best chance would have been to establish themselves as a really good MP, valuable to the party, and then chicken run to a safer seat for the next election. But some of them had a chance. There were some of those red wall seats that absolutely, but it had to be through levelling up, not culture wars. They should have been lobbying for levelling up projects instead of banging on about boats, especially in red wall seats about 50 miles inland. They needed new hospitals, better transport links, schools that don't fall down. What they didn't need were expensive flights to Rwanda for 200 asylum seekers a year. They could have used that money to build hospitals. That would have won them votes. They only have themselves to blame. It would be strategically useless to waste resources on trying to retain any red wall seats at this point, even those which might have been possible to fight if they hadn't completely failed to deliver on levelling up. As I discussed in one of my videos yesterday, the Tories are in a real hole, and it's much deeper than a lot of people realise when you look at not just the headline polls, but the details underneath. There's no winning the election unless Labour self-destruct, so damage limitation has to be their aim. And today is damage limitation. It will actually help Sunak limit the damage. It absolutely requires the Conservatives to focus their efforts in seats which are vulnerable but have been used to voting Conservative for generations, so more easily winnable. Not seats where people have been used to voting Labour for generations and one time they voted Tory because they didn't like Jeremy Corbyn. You know, there was supposed to be a meeting of the new Conservatives this afternoon. It's a Suella Braverman support group. I would be genuinely surprised if they tried to cause a problem for Sunak. I mean, who knows? I'm recording this ahead of time, of course. But their long-term aim is to see Braverman made Tory leader. For that, it doesn't work in their favour to be seen as responsible for instability, which can then be used to blame them for the election loss. They need to position themselves as the I told you so faction after the election. For this, they also need to be able to say to party members that they did what they could to maintain party unity, even though they knew the leadership was pulling in the wrong direction. They have to be seen as loyal. If they try to agitate too publicly, then they really are idiots. Can't rule it out. Many of them are idiots. But whether this is a full-blown civil war within the Tory party, which I suspect not, but who knows, or just a simmering tensions, which I think is more likely, Sunak has laid down a gauntlet of sorts. The far right, the culture warriors, who claim to be the centre-right, by the way, are spitting feathers about being disenfranchised. Oh, the party's been taken over by the left. You behave yourselves. Really doesn't feel like Sunak would be able to carry on into next autumn, even if he wanted to. There'll be so many flashpoints coming up. If Cleverly starts pursuing more realistic policies to deal with asylum, that will irritate the head cases. The sight of David Cameron meeting with European leaders on behalf of the government will also annoy them. Being clear, Cameron's not really popular amongst European governments. You know, they're well aware he is the one who was so weak that he triggered a major threat to European unity and completely destabilised one of the most powerful countries on the continent. But Cameron will at least hold no hostility towards them on his part, and that will not play well with the hardcore Brexiteers in the Tory party. His appointment cannot be seen as anything other than a screw you to the far right of the party from Rishi Sunak. In many ways, you could say about time. I don't think this is a big lurch to the centre, by the way, but it is a move away from the extreme policies, the culture wars, basically. After all, what of those policies of the far right have done the Tories any good? It's about time Sunak started to take something seriously, even if this is the best he can do. You know, some people are asking, how can David Cameron hold this office when he's not even an MP? Well, how many times do I keep saying, you know, when people get, oh, Rishi Sunak's a re-elected Prime Minister, they're all unelected. Our government is never elected. No member of the UK government is ever elected. We elect members of our legislature, and that's it. The executive, no. The legislature decides who forms the executive. It is usual to pick members from their own ranks, but it's not required. Finally, Greg Hands has gone on. He's gone as Tory party chair. He's off, taking his note with him. Another bit of incompetence flushed away. As for how this is playing out in other parties, unsurprisingly, all the main opposition parties are saying that the appointment of David Cameron, someone who is not an MP, shows that Sunak simply has no talent available to him in his parliamentary party. Even an anonymous Tory MP described it as unelected Foreign Secretary appointed by unelected Prime Minister. The Lib Dems have further said that it shows just how much Sunak fears them in the blue wall, that he's having to bring Cameron back. Little bit of trivia at the end as well. So we talk a lot about just how unrepresentative Tory cabinets are. Not very diverse. In terms of backgrounds, so many of them privately educated compared to the population average. Like 2/3 of them privately educated, 7% of the general population privately educated. But this is the first time, I'm told, since 1964, that the holders of all 4 of the most senior government positions have been public schooled. Now, for our American cousins, that does not mean what you think it means. That means top private schools. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.